Hi, my name is MIna Yoon, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist at Yellow Chair Collective. And today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Korean word and concept of Nunchi. So Nunchi, while there is no direct translation to English, I think the closest way to describe it is it's a social awareness and ability to read subtle emotional cues in a situation. So not to be confused with mind reading or people pleasing, it's more about contextual emotional attunement and the ability to notice what's happening emotionally in a space. So maybe you walk into a room and you notice like, oh, the vibes are off, it feels a little tense, maybe there's been an argument. That's nunchi that tells you that. Or maybe you meet up with a friend and, reading their body language, maybe their facial expressions, you think like, oh, it kind of feels like they're itching to tell me something. That's nunchi. So to kind of give you a little bit of cultural background, Korean culture, much like many other Asian cultures, is very collectivist, meaning they prioritize the importance of social harmony and group functioning, often over individual expression. So that means everyone plays a role in creating this harmony, hence nunchi. And grammatically, nunchi is used like 눈치를 보다, 보다 meaning to see. So it's something you seek or you observe or you see. So it's an action or a skill. And as a cat lover, I think our reactions, or not our reactions, but our interactions with cats are a good way to kind of illustrate the concept of nunchi. So, obviously our cats can't talk, so we have to read through their body language, their cues. We have to get to know their personalities, right? In order to be able to understand, like, oh, is my cat wanting food? Is she hungry? Is my cat wanting some attention? Is my cat wanting to play? Is my cat bored? Right? We have to use nunchi to kind of understand like what is it that my cat is feeling or needing, and what is the appropriate way to respond. And also cats are very big on consent and boundaries, which I think nunchi is also, it goes hand in hand with consent and boundaries. So first, to kind of go over a little bit about, earlier I mentioned that nunchi is not to be confused with mind reading and people pleasing. So it can quickly turn into that, right? So there's healthy nunchi, which is what we want to aim for, and unhealthy nunchi, which is when we kind of get into that territory of mind reading. So healthy nunchi is meant to support empathy and attunement in relationships. It can help to de-escalate conflict or to prevent conflict. It can promote a sense of social connectedness and harmony. So it helps us to feel more, connected to each other. Like, oh, like this person through nunchi, they kind of figured that I was feeling down and they asked about it, right? That was an opportunity for me to feel supported and for them to be a supporter, or vice versa. Like, oh, this was an opportunity for me to kind of help de-escalate this conflict. Whereas unhealthy nunchi is when we get into the kind of walking on eggshells, right? Or over monitoring, like, really getting hyper vigilant, reading into every little, micro expression or tone of voice, being fearful of saying the wrong thing or messing up, making ourselves smaller, essentially, having difficulty expressing our own needs and our own feelings in that situation. So there's a fine line between healthy and unhealthy nunchi, and we want to be able to really like find that balance between emotional attunement versus hypervigilance. And so how I like to think of it, like what helps me to distinguish between healthy and unhealthy nunchi, is I like to think of it as a both and concept. So if unhealthy nunchi is very much focused on the other person or the other people, right? You're walking on eggshells around them, afraid to upset them, making yourself smaller so that you don't upset or bother someone, right? Whereas healthy nunchi is about the group. It's about the relationship, meaning you and me. So not just about them, not just centered on them, but both of us and all of our needs. So what is the point or purpose of nunchi, and how can it help? So I've broken this down into a few different categories of relationships. So in friendships, nunchi can help us to recognize when someone needs support or space, right? So you can kind of tell like, okay, like is this person wanting me to be there for them? Maybe they want to talk about it. Or, oh, I can tell that, I think maybe they just need a little bit of space right now to process on their own. Nunchi is a skill that can help us to do that, to be able to distinguish that. Or when to respect boundaries, right? Like maybe, we're joking between friends and then I start to notice like, oh, like by their body language, facial expressions, maybe like tone of voice changes, I can tell like, okay, maybe it's going a little far and this is the time for me to stop, or to maybe kind of give cues to the group to like, oh, okay, maybe let's redirect, right? And then in romantic relationships, Nunchi can help us to sort of notice things like emotional withdrawal from our partner, or bids for connection, or tension before conflict. So as an example, maybe you and your partner both work from home, and one day you're working together and you turn to your partner and ask, hey, what did you think about this movie? And maybe there's a couple second lag in between, you know, their responses. Maybe they're still looking at the computer, not really making eye contact with you. They're still typing away. They, you know, their eyebrows are kind of like furrowed like this, and you can tell like, okay, I think they're a little busy, they're stressed, maybe this is now not a good time. And I'll ask the question later, wrap up the conversation. Whereas on the other hand, if you're being asked a question, you know, sometimes the question is just a simple question. What did you think of the movie? And other times it could be a bid for connection. Like they're wanting to connect with you. They're wanting to have a conversation. It's not necessarily about the movie. And Nunchi will kind of help you to gauge that, which will help inform how you choose to respond, how you choose to navigate that situation, whether you respond more casually or maybe with a little more intention. And also with things like the tension, right? You can tell when there's tension. You can tell if someone is quieter than usual, or if their body language, maybe they're kind of like angled a little bit away from you, or maybe their facial expressions are a little more like stoic, right? When they're usually more animated. Nunchi will kind of help you to notice those things, and that alerts you like, okay, maybe this is an opportunity to check in. And then in the workplace, Nunchi can help us to sense the group mood, read the room, or, you know, navigate hierarchical relationships, right? Like there's an appropriate way to interact with your boss versus with a colleague or a coworker. And similarly, navigating different communication styles, right? You know, it's not like we go around and telling people, hey, this is my communication style, this is how I like to communicate. And so we can use Nunchi to kind of gauge a little bit, like, okay, I think this person tends to be more direct, or okay, I think this person tends to be a little bit more passive. And so it helps us to navigate those situations without having to spell it out, like spell everything out for each other. And another good example of how you can use Nunchi as a workplace is meetings, right? So maybe, you know, this is just a simple check-in meeting. It tends to be casual. Maybe it's just like your colleagues and your manager. Maybe, you know, generally there are jokes going around. People are checking in about their weekends, just updating each other on where they're at with their tasks. And then maybe there's a different type of meeting where there are some higher ups there. There are presentations going on. And there may be like colleagues that you're not as familiar with, right? The way that you show up in each meeting is going to be different. And the being able to discern, how do I show up? How do I interact in this meeting is Nunchi. So sometimes another way that the word Nunchi is used in Korean grammatically is Nunchi 있다, meaning you have Nunchi or they have Nunchi. And Nunchi 없다, meaning you don't have it or they don't have it. And there is a level of truth to this, right? That, you know, some people are either born with or maybe develop earlier on that skill of social awareness, whereas others develop it a little bit later, or maybe that skill is just not as strong. However, it is still something that is an action done with intention. And as I mentioned earlier, a way that is commonly used is 눈치를 보다, like I'm looking for or seeking. So it's something that can be done with intention and is buildable skill. So I've broken it down into a few simple steps. So number one, the nunchi pause. This is where you pause before you react or act, and you look for like nonverbal cues. What is the situational context, right? Like what kind of setting are you in? What's the vibe here? And then you reflect. What do these things that I've picked up on, these things that I've noticed, what does it tell me that the other person or the group is feeling or needing? And then how am I feeling in response to that? Or how am I feeling in that situation? And what is my goal or purpose here, right? Like meaning, you know, is my goal to de-escalate a conflict? Or am I trying to just gain understanding of what's going on? Or am I trying to connect with this person? Or maybe I just want to avoid any tension, right? Like, so thinking about what is my goal here, my purpose. And then number three, responding intentionally. So based on your reflections and observations from steps 1 and 2, what is an appropriate response? What response supports both our needs and the relationship's needs or the group's needs? What would promote that sense of social harmony and connectedness? So key takeaways here. The goal of Nunchi is to promote social connectedness and harmony, to be able to attune to myself and others, to be curious and intentional rather than reactive. Number 2, healthy Nunchi is about balance. So attunement, not mind reading, empathy, not people pleasing, and meeting kind of the needs of the group rather than making myself smaller. So important to remember that and to find that balance. So I hope you learned something new today. Thank you.